We have the Charlie Veitch and me, the Black Belt Barrister, as I've now become to be known. So, hi, Charlie. So,
hello, Daniel. How are you this evening?
I'm good, actually. Yeah, it's been a long day. It's been a long week. And what are we? Only Thursday. Well, tomorrow's Friday. So, but yeah, there's so much going on in the news. You and I have obviously touched base and said that it's worth discussing a few things. Me from a legal perspective, and possibly from a philosophical perspective, I think, from your point of view, I see. So,
yeah, very much so.
What do you want to start with?
Well, I have been watching the Wayne Couzens developments with interest since the Sarah Everard disappearance first broke, and I think the whole nation's been gripped by a man with power, a police officer. I think he even had a specialist role within his force. Kidnapping, raping, and murdering a young lady. So what really struck me was like watching the sentencing live. I was following it live, and it said 11:30 we're going to get this. And I watched the closing remarks from the defense, and they said, these are all the mitigating factors why it shouldn't be a whole of life. And then they explained what a whole of life means. And I think it was for killing 2 or more people, some sadism involved, a lot of premeditation, but it was very clear on 2 or more people. So I was, there was a big part of me, Daniel, that when I saw his sentencing, as a father who has a daughter, I was like, yeah, good. But then I instantly started to feel a bit guilty for being so aggressive, because what this whole of life term means is that he's going to die in jail, is that there is no hope for him. So yeah, Wayne Couzens, the establishment has decided he is beyond redemption.
Yeah, I hear that, and I think this is the to and fro, and this is the struggle, I think, that a lot of people will face. But I think initially there is certainly going to be that reaction of he deserves it, and it is that sort of a heinous case that these sort of terms are reserved for. And the whole of life, it really is, for those that aren't sure, whole of life means whole of life. And then from a legal perspective, a lot of people get confused between a life sentence and then a whole of life sentence. So if someone gets life, then it is that they are on license for life, not necessarily incarcerated for life, imprisoned. But when they are released, if they are released, then they're released on license. And so if they do anything else, if they are convicted of anything else, they are returned to prison. But a whole of life is exactly that. And it's been reserved for very, very narrow cases. But the judges now have this discretion in very specific cases where they decide this applies in this scenario. This person should not be released and not be considered for release.
And obviously the fact that he's a police officer played a big part into it. The abuse of that trust that the public has, the fact that he could walk up to a young lady, flash his warrant card or his badge, and then she would do as he says. Yeah. There is an element of that. But I don't think, forgive me if you might know a little bit more, having gone a bit deeper into it as a barrister, but apart from the police officer trust, did his actions portray as much evil as other whole of life terms, or do you think he's been I don't want to call him a victim. The man's a murderer. He took a young lady's life and he deserves a big punishment. But do you think in a way he is a victim of the political climate at the moment, of toxic masculinity being a big issue, of the Me Too movement, the hashtag Me Too, that women don't feel safe, and also the fact that his sentencing comes literally days after that young British Asian lady disappeared in very similar circumstances, that 28-year-old here in England. So, yeah, sorry, lots of questions. I'll let you shoot on those ones.
Yeah, I can sort of put those together, and essentially the response to that is that from my view in watching this unfold, it is, and the words that you've used that I'll pick on are the premeditation behind this. And in fact, there's a lot of talk at the moment to extend the discretion to apply these sort of orders to the premeditated murder of a child, whereas at the moment it's limited to narrow circumstances where there are certain other things involved. But there is a lot of pressure to include the premeditation for that. So from my perspective, it is that premeditation, the planning, the cunning, and as you've mentioned twice now, the abuse of power, which plays a part, and certainly played a part in the judge's comments, because that abuse of power, the abuse of trust, the abuse of office, the abuse of the reputation of an organization which tries to stand proud and protect its reputation, quite rightly. The public should have trust in these organizations that are there to protect the public. So from my perspective, those are the main issues that have really driven, aside from the obvious nature of the offence, the amount of premeditation, the abuse of office, those are the things that come into play here. And I can relate, because I've always been, I'll say paranoid. I don't mean I walk around paranoid, but it explains what I mean very simply, which is why I use the phrase. So when I've been going about my business for all of my life, if I were to explain how I approach certain situations to somebody, that the word paranoid explains it. I'm not a paranoid person, but the definition, the explanation of paranoia suggests that I'm always looking for something that doesn't look quite right, something that's always wrong, and as many of my peers would put it, having an inquiring mind as to looking into these things. And so when I have noticed things, let's say, that are particularly suspicious, other people may miss, and it's that kind of planning and cunning that I probably see, whereas others might miss. And I have it's a slight tangent, but it will explain what I mean. There's a slight story I have about this, where I've been walking through the centre of town with a friend. This was many years ago. I did 3 years as a voluntary police officer, and I was very young at the time. And
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
There we go, and learnt a lot. So that was well before I became a barrister. And so I was walking through town with a friend of mine, and there was a group. I'll call them youths, so that everyone knows what type of group that we're talking about. Everyone will know what I mean. I'm not being ageist, but that's what I mean. And one of them asked my friend and I for the time, or my friend and me, I should say. And I sort of took a step back, because this didn't look quite right to me. My friends looked at me as though I was being paranoid, as I've just explained. And so I took a sort of worldly step back and very deliberately took the time from my wristwatch and told this young fella the time. We got round the corner, my friend and I, and he said, "Why are you being so defensive with these guys? They just wanted the time from us." And I said, "No, I don't think they did. I think there was more to it than that. There was 6 or 7 of them. They were together. They were a group. They were out. There was a clock up there. They've each got one's got a watch at least. At least one of them had a phone by then. Phones were around by then, and." So my friend couldn't understand this, but for me it was absolutely clear there was something going on. Anyway, I recognised one of them with the cap, and it was a red cap, and I just recognised this one guy. So 5 or 10 minutes later, we were around the corner. We happened to be crossing paths again, and he was coming across the road when the traffic was on green, the crossing was on red. So we were all standing waiting, and this guy came across. Again, twofold now. This is one of the guys from earlier, and he's crossing the road when he shouldn't be. Something's wrong here, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But of course, my friend, no doubt, was not. But in that instant, he'd tried to mug this lady standing next to me waiting to cross. And I think as a result of the martial arts training, I reacted very quickly, grabbed hold of this guy by the scruff of the neck, because I knew what was going on. He was mugging this lady. I'd taken him down to the ground and taken the bag off him in one hand and got him pinned to the ground. You might say that was a reasonable force citizen's arrest for robbery. Okay, all of this happened in a snap because of the training that I'd done, but there was also this way of thinking that this was premeditated. It was planned, and the reason I'm saying all this is what makes these things particularly heinous, because they are planned and premeditated against unsuspecting people. So had it been opportunistic, that's different, but it was clearly, in my mind, it was clearly planned, because it was ongoing throughout the course of the evening. I'd seen them before. I had the suspicion then, and I saw him again, and it happened. So in a very long-winded way, that is why I think these things are taken so very much more seriously, because there's so much planning, and this chap in this case, I was reading over the last couple of days that it was planned for a very long time, and the abuse of the power that came into it as well. I can't think of anything worse than someone having literally a badge of power over someone else. Planning and abusing that is why this has been taken so seriously. So those are my thoughts on that.
Okay, but I'd like to come back with, like the premeditation thing. I agree with you. I watched a compilation on the BBC just before we started recording of all his movements, of renting a car, of planning the route, of filling a jerry can with petrol so that he could burn the clothes and the body afterwards. There was a lot. This is like his big fantasy. This was his thing. This was his weekend's fun. And but I just want to park that for a second. And obviously, you and I, we're both old enough as slowly entering middle-aged dads. We've seen many cases in this country and abroad of mothers who will murder their own children. Like sometimes 4 children at once. They'll drown them in the bath or whatever. They'll strangle them. And then obviously we're all horrified. And it's like the woman, even she may have premeditated it, but she may have been very mentally ill. How come, Daniel, in law sometimes a man may have a mental illness where he has this depraved bit of him where he can't stop thinking about kidnap. But then we are so quick to forgive a mother who, let's be honest, murdering 4 of your own children is, I'd say, a slight order of magnitude over what's happened to poor Sarah Everard. It sounds so kind of shallow to talk about, but someone has to play this part to have these philosophical conversations. Why do we forgive a mother who may have premeditated it over a week, but then we say, yeah, she's crazy, compared to, say, a guy who premeditated it over, say, a weekend, and then he's not crazy, if you see what I'm saying?
Well, I think in any case, the court has to take all of the background and all of the circumstances into account. And so I don't think there's any way to generalize, because the court has to, when deciding on a step forward in any case like this, that there has to be an assessment as to what has happened with this individual. And if mental health plays a part in that, then that's what the court has to consider.
Do you think it's surprising that Wayne Couzens never tried the mental health mental health angle for his defense?
Well, it's hard to say. I think if someone I think if someone uses a mental health angle as a defense, I think that there has to be some history. There has to be some supporting evidence, some trail of devastation that's gone before, and perhaps the seeking of help, and then it becomes a defense. Otherwise it's false, isn't it?
Okay, yeah, but again, it's hard to generalize, but it seems like at least the media, the way it reports on, say, mothers who destroy their own children, seems to be always angling towards a mental health angle almost automatically in the media, at least. Have you seen that?
I have seen that, yes.
Okay, interesting. So, okay, I mean, do you have any... there's also another subject that I think we want to touch upon, but do you have any closing remarks about the Wayne Couzens sentencing that you'd like to get out?